Okay. Can anybody tell me, why would this be difficult to graph? Right, you'd have to make them both look at like y equals mx plus b, and can you tell that would involve a lot of fractions once you start simplifying? Also, if you tried to get x by itself or y by itself, you'd also end up with a lot of nasty fractions because you end up dividing away things. Notice there's no like x by itself or y by itself in these situations. This one is easiestly done with elimination. So the first step of elimination is to multiply one or both equations by a number so that a variable cancels out. So multiply one or both equations by a number so that a variable cancels out. We're going to be doing this for two sections. One is 7.3 and one is 7.4. 7.4 is way harder than 7.3, and these ones are going to kind of fall into place. So we're not always even going to use step one because they're going to be set up to cancel out immediately. But 7.4 we'll be using number one a lot. Second step is to add the equations together. If you do it right, one variable will cancel out. So I'm going to add these two together like it's an addition problem, top to bottom. Do you see how the x's are lined up and the y's are lined up? And the number over here is lined up too? Can you tell right now that when I add the y's together, they're going to cancel each other out? That's why I don't have to do step one, because a variable is already going to cancel out. But if it was something like 2 and 10, I'd have to multiply one of them by 5 to make sure that they cancel out. We're going to be doing that more tomorrow. So right now, step 1 and 2 are both right here. And these cancel out. We end up with 8x over here. And the other side? 16. We're adding. Okay, now what should we do? Divide by 8 on both sides. Okay, so I'm going to write it down here. We're solving. Solve for the remaining variable. So if I divide by 8 on both sides, I get x equals 2. So this is step 3. Now what? What is my answer supposed to look like? A point. I need an x and a y. Haley? Right, so I'm going to write, plug that answer in. Into one of the original equations. And solve. Haley, do you have an opinion? Top equation, bottom equation? Bottom one. All right, so let's see. I've got x equals 2, so I'm going to write 5 times 2. I'm not going to write x. I'm going to write 2. Minus 5y equals 5. A lot of 5s in this one. Yuck. That's 10 minus 5y equals 5. Then I'm going to subtract 10 on both sides. and I end up with negative 5y equals what? Negative 5, and then divide by negative 5 on both sides, and I end up with y equals 1. But that's not what my answer is supposed to look like. What's my answer supposed to look like? What? Right. So my final step is going to be write it as a point. See how that was a lot faster than solving for a variable and plugging it into the other, or trying to make them both look like y equals mx plus b and graphing? It doesn't always work that way. It's not always that elimination is the fastest way. It depends on how the problem is set up. So like my job as a math teacher is kind of like as like a metals or a woods teacher or a shop teacher, is I show you how to use all the tools, and then we have to decide when to use the tools. Because sometimes you want a chainsaw and sometimes you want a handsaw, and those are for very different situations, but they both cut wood. Okay, so we're going to try one more, example 2. Everybody write down 3x plus 6y equals 30, and 5x plus 6y equals 6. Okay, can you see what's set up to cancel out right now? The 6's, but would they cancel out if we added them together right now? No, so instead we're going to do that step 1. Step 1 says multiply one or both equations by a number so that something cancels out. So if I change it from 6 to a negative 6 on one of them, do you see how they'll cancel out? Do you guys have a preference, top equation or bottom equation for the negative 6? Bottom. Okay, so I'm going to multiply the bottom equation by negative 1. And it has to be the whole thing. It can't just be the 6. And then I'm going to rewrite the two equations. So I'm going to write 3x plus 6y equals 30. See how I kept the top one exactly the same? And then the bottom one turns into negative 5x minus 6y equals negative 6. So everything became negative when I multiplied by a negative 1. Now, when I add these together, do you see now that our y's will cancel out? All right, finish the problem with your partner. The correct answer is negative 12, 11. Do all the steps together. Talk. So do you see how the 6y and the negative 6y are going to end up? Because adding the 3 plus negative 5 and 30 plus a negative 6. Welcome to use a calculator if you want to. All right.